for the record. That's a thing that can happen. Greetings, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you are here. We are back playing some Magic the Gathering Arena as usual. And I was asked today, or not today, I guess yesterday, what deck I would play if I was intending to just climb the ladder. Like, I had no other goal but to climb the ladder. That's not really the way my content normally works and stuff like that. You know, I play for fun, and I try and encourage other people to have fun in the game. I think Magic the Gathering is an extremely fun game, and you can have a great time doing it. So I typically prioritize that. But I kind of realized, you know, it's been a while since we put up a deck that was just strictly designed to help folks ladder. And I thought, well, okay, so what deck would I choose? And gave it a little bit of thought, and I think currently, like, the #1 deck in Explorer is Mono Red. I think that's the deck that you gotta recognize you're going to face most often. Why? Well, because first of all, it's very consistent, and it's very strong, right? So you can't go wrong if you just decided to play Mono Red, right? But that's, again, Mono Red's not really my style, but Mono Green. Okay, now we're talking, all right? I would not consider this a budget list by any means, right? We're looking at a whole bunch of rares, some Pelt Collectors, Primal Mights, Scavenging Ooze, the Werewolf Pack Leaders, the Cemetery Prowler, actually a mythic, but Kazandu Mammoth rares, Old Growth Trolls rares, Steel Leaf Champions rares, Collected Companies rares, and as well as the Great Henge. So certainly not a budget-friendly list by any means, but folks, what this does do well is both attack, you know, very high power, oftentimes either evasive or trampling threats, but it also blocks well. So if we find ourselves on the draw, you know, we still have game. So one of those things about the Mono Red deck is you're almost just better off conceding when you're on the draw, you know? Like, that's not strictly true, obviously. But your win rate on the play should be something in the vicinity of 70%, whereas your win rate on the draw is going to be much closer to 50%. And then it's going to equalize somewhere around, you know, 55, 58% for a very skilled player playing the Mono Red deck. But you know, that's not the kind of way I want to play personally. Like, I want to play the games out and have a good time. So, Mono Green. That said, without further ado, let's get some games with it, shall we? All right, folks, here we are up against Oscar, and yeah, I think this hand is fine. Not exceptional or anything like that. We don't have a 1-drop. A lot of our best draws are going to involve Llanowar Elves. But the hand is good. You know, we have, well, shoot. All right, here's our 1-drop. Darn it, where were you last turn, Pelt Collector? That's okay. Briefly debate how the game is going to play out, and we decide, you know what, actually, we would rather have a Pelt Collector on board than a Barkhide Troll on board. Primarily because we were kind of thinking our opponent may have removal, right? And we want to, we also wanted to leave open the possibility of growing our Pelt Collector and using Primal Might as a fight spell against whatever creature they played. So either we want them to remove our 1-drop instead of our 2-drop, or be able to use our Barkhide Troll and Primal Might, you know. So none of that happens. Our opponent apparently ends up going to Omen of the Sea and realizes they can't beat what's on the board. So GG, opponent, GG. All right, folks, we have another opponent up here. I don't want to spoil anything about the game, but we also aren't in the business of embarrassing people, so we're going to go ahead and cover that name. Last game, definitely an early scoop. Not the sort of satisfying win I often like to show, but I do want to stress that does happen. You know, we're in Diamond. This is not, you know, we're not fooling around in Bronze or anything. But you will get people, you know, you will find situations where you end up getting so far ahead that, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult to win the game, right? And they end up scooping relatively early because you get so far ahead. It's not really an early scoop if you know you can never win. And our opponent recognized that and scooped up last game. This game, our opponent is playing Call and Familiar, so naturally we're going to kind of prioritize getting some trampling creatures down as early as possible and some evasive creatures. Old Growth Troll, Steel Leaf Champion, definitely are very powerful options in this matchup. But growing the Pelt Collectors, also important, folks. They also will allow us to get trample eventually. You know, once you get 3 1/1 counters on a Pelt Collector, at a minimum, it gains trample. So that is obviously a little bit of a goal here, as is normal. Our opponent going through some Call Familiar loops, popping down a Blood Tithe Harvester. I don't really agree with the way our opponent is handling this game, but it is what it is. You know, you get those sometimes. So again, we decide, wouldn't be at all surprised to see things like fatal pushes, things like that happening, but the Blood Tithe Harvester, we don't want them to be able to activate that either. Really hoping to dodge a Fatal Bush here, and sure enough, it does happen. We're pretty happy about that. Briefly debate giving up the Barkhide Troll and decide, you know what, if they want to do that, that's fine. They're going to have to give up another creature in the future to get it back. Since they don't have the Witch's Oven untapped, they can't go through the sacrifice loop. And, notably, folks, we give up a 3-power creature, but put counters on both of our Pelt Collectors. So we really only give up 1 power to make things inconvenient on our opponent with their Call Familiar going to the bin. Opponent has an Oni Cult Anvil. Oh, shoot. Well, yeah, that's a good way to get some food back here. Oni Cult Anvil going to sacrifice the blood token, almost certainly get a 1/1. That has to be done at sorcery speed, can't be done at instant speed. The sacrificing can happen anytime, but you only get the 1/1 if it happens during your turn, and only once per turn, right? Opponent going to do the Witch's Oven thing, and bring back Call Familiar with the food. Indeed, it does happen, but again, folks, the Witch's Oven tapped. A little bit awkward here for our opponent. Well, no big deal. We briefly debate the Old Growth Troll just to be able to grow things twice, but the Steel Leaf Champion can't even be blocked by the Call Familiar. So that makes things really, really awkward. Oh boy, our opponent almost putting it on the trampling creature, and that would have been a grievous error indeed. Ends up blocking correctly there on the 3/3, but again, no Call Familiar loop. The tapping the Witch's Oven early kind of demonstrates to me that our opponent is very likely a novice with the deck, and is, you know, kind of struggling. I want to stress, folks, that I think this is, in general, a pretty good matchup anyway. The Steel Leaf Champions can't be blocked by the Call Familiar, and it's not very profitable to block trampling creatures with your Witch's Oven loop. So I don't necessarily think even our opponent playing properly here would have made a huge difference in the game. But I do believe our opponent is screwing up, honestly. And that's why we kind of cover the name. I don't think it's a good, I don't want to be toxic, folks, and I don't want to promote toxicity in the community. I think Magic the Gathering is a fantastic game. It's a lot of fun to play, and I think there's room for all of us to play and have fun. And our opponent is clearly learning this deck, and they're learning the deck in ranked, which is a brave maneuver, you know. So we're going to not discourage them from doing that thing. We are going to go ahead, slam a Great Henge, which is likely just going to put a nail in the coffin here, and an Old Growth Troll, which grows our final Pelt Collector up to trampling, which means none of these blocks are going to matter. So we're going to be able to kill both of these Obnixli and send the Steel Leaf Champion at our opponent's face. The block just, none of this really helps our opponent. They block anyway. And going to send that damage up at our noggin. We dropped to 12. The issue is the Great Henge is gaining us a bunch of life. Okay, Mayhem Devil, that's a scary one. But, you know, I mean, look at this board, folks. What's our opponent going to do? Yeah, this is not a good position for them to be in. And, oh, boy, here comes the Scavenging Ooze, as if it wasn't bad enough. Scavenging Ooze would clearly make it worse. So, as kind of a mercy play here, we decide let's just animate the land and make things difficult on our opponent. We know they're going to chump block it because it's the only one that can be chump blocked, because it doesn't have trample, and our opponent does not know that and dies for the trouble. Again, folks, I really don't think the outcome of the game would have changed, because this is one of the matchups we kind of do very, very well in. But yeah, Yeah, every deck has a learning curve, folks, and our opponent's on theirs. All right, folks, here we are up against Mario. Good luck, Mario. Yep. Mountain Foundry Steep Denizen going to make appearances. We're just going to go with a forest. A little bit on the back foot here. Not pleased about that. Like I say, the mono red deck very, very good on the play, and the Foundry Street Denizen starts are some of the most explosive. Oh no, into Burning Tree Emissary? Yeah, this is the dream draw. As long as they don't have like Burning Tree, Burning Tree, Burning Tree, Burning Tree, Burning Tree, or whatever, you know, we'll be okay. But darn it, no, they did go Burning Tree into Robber of the Rich, which, darn it, that's scary. Oh no, they pull a Collected Company off the top. Folks, we're a Collected Company deck, and we have yet to see the card. Feeling a little bit bummed about that, and we just go with the Werewolf Pack Leader for our turn. We do get a land, which is good. Or we do have a third land, which is good, I should say. We have a number of very, very powerful 3-drops here. The Cemetery Prowlers, the Great Troll, the Steel Leaf Champion, kind of over here behind my shoulder, are all very, very powerful draws. Oh, crud. Goblin Chain Whirler coming on down. That's very, very annoying. The Werewolf Pack Leader. Oh, no! They get another Collected Company. Highly inconvenient. Well, we decide we just can't take too much damage here, so we get rid of the Robber of the Rich. We don't want them having Collected Company. Good heavens. Can you imagine Mono Red with Collected Company? In red? Ah! Without even having to worry about the inconsistencies of splashing a second color. Good lord, that would be scary. So we get rid of the Robber of the Rich to try and avoid that possibility. Oh, that is another Goblin Chain Whirler. That is tragic indeed. And they do get in. No. Just the Goblin Chain Whirler. Okay, it's tempting to block here, but no, we have that 4th toughness. There's no reason to spew that off. So, briefly debate how to go about this. Scavenging Ooze could grow. But Cemetery Prowler doesn't need to, and it does make our Scavenging Ooze cheaper. Admittedly, we're giving up 1 point of life gain, which absolutely can matter when you're down in single digits against Mono Red. I do think it was likely worth it, though, because, again, the Cemetery Prowler also having the 4th toughness. Very, very good here. Definitely at least worth considering here, obviously. Opponent does have a Ramunap Ruins and 4 other remaining lands, so the Ramunap Ruins can be activated. We cannot take too much more damage, but shoot, folks, our opponent does not have good attacks, and we are quite pleased about that. We have just the Werewolf Pack Leader in the bin. And a lot of decisions to make here. Different directions we can go. We can just develop our board further with the Scavenging Ooze. Very, very good. The Great Troll, obviously very good as well. We elect to keep the Scavenging Ooze in our hand and grow our other Scavenging Ooze on the board. The 3rd power and 3rd toughness, very strong here because, you know, if our opponent grabs a land off the top, I'm sorry, a creature off the top, they could grow their Foundry Street Denizen, things like that, right? So making sure to stay out of that is very good. Yes, finally a land off the top, and boom, Great Henge going to hit with a thump. Not only does it draw us a bunch of cards, which is normally the most important part of the Great Henge's card there, it's also going to gain us life. And against the mono red deck, that is absolutely key. So our opponent drawing another card for the turn. Oh no. They hit another land, and it's Annex, hardened in the forge. Good heavens, that is terrifying. Well, okay. Suddenly we're presented with options again. We do know we need to do something eventually, because if they've got Annex, they've certainly got Embercleave, right? So we decide, okay, we need to, since they're holding back 6 power worth of first striking creatures. So we can't attack with anything less than a 6 power creature, otherwise, you know, the Chain Whirlers just first strike us down, right? It's a very, very costly attack step. So we get in for 7. Our opponent just takes it all, unsurprisingly there. But we have good blocks. We have the Steel Leaf Champion things. Again, unless they get Embercleave. If they get Embercleave, the game ends. Even from where we're at, I think. it would be so costly to block. Remember, the NX going to have 22 power, essentially. So they would first strike down, well, more than that, actually. Like, whatever, 13 power worth of creatures, or 13 toughness worth of creatures before anything else. Folks, we're kind of flooding out a little bit ourselves as well, inconveniently enough. Trying to decide how to go about it, though. We have a lot of different options. Decide not worth it. Let's wait at least one more turn, and then progress. Den of the Bugbear, very inconvenient, but there are a whole bunch of different ways this could go well. We're going to go ahead and gain our life, pass the turn here, but we are going to exile the land from our graveyard, so, you know, we don't have to look at it. We don't have any way to get that back anyway. Oh no, Hashep Oasis, kind of annoying here. Really desperately wanted a creature, but this is okay. This is okay. With the Steel Leaf Champion being a 6/5, our Lair of the Hydra being a 7/7, we have some really, really good attacks. Remember, folks, we also went down to 15, or we went up to 15, I'm sorry, with this Great Henge activation. So our opponent does not have the ability to block with the Den of the Bugbear here, and we have just an awful lot of power and toughness on the offense. Yes, the Goblin Chain Whirlers are very, very good on defense, but they can't afford to tag team like the Steel Leaf Champion, for instance, which on earlier turns would have been disastrous. And they've got to be able to, you know, they're going to end up having to do some amount of chump blocking here, and the Steel Leaf Champion cannot be chump blocked. Our opponent trying to line up blocks here, and honestly, I think the Burning Tree Emissary going on the Lair of the Hydra was an accident. They thought they were targeting the Steel Leaf Champion, I think, because it can't be blocked by creature's power 2 or less. And when they realized, oh no, so now they're rereading Steel Leaf Champion, going, hold on, can we even line up blocks that win? And realizing they can't. So it doesn't matter. They just like, oh, whatever. Assign the Foundry Street Denizen, activate their Ramanop Ruins, call it a game. Yeah, folks, there was a way for our opponent to block this turn that left them in the game, but it was, you know, their board was going to be completely decimated there. So even though their activity was tantamount to a concession, I don't even blame them. They were in a rough spot for sure. So GG opponent, GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Jamie Mac. Good luck, Jamie Mac. And yes, this hand is good. Why is this hand good, folks? Well, Llanowar Elves. That's the answer. 1 mana, 1/1's not super great off the top on like turn 6 or something. But on turn 1, Llanowar Elves very, very strong indeed. We start on the draw, but Llanowar Elves just kind of makes us recapture that tempo a little bit. Doesn't necessarily negate the fact that our opponent was on the play, but it's definitely the sort of thing that helps us come back a great deal. Oh boy, our opponent on Fight Rigging goes ahead and plays that. But, folks, the fact that we have the Great Henge in our deck is very, very strong here. We're able to both Great Henge and follow it up with a Barkhide Troll on turn 3. Again, on the draw, but that's okay. And our opponent with a bunch of 1/1 removal in hand, and not going to be able to defeat that. Scoops them up. GG, Jamie Mac. GG. All right, folks. You are up against Delver. Oh, crud. Does that mean our opponent's going to flip on turn 2? If they were my Delver, they never flip. But our opponent gets to... Oh, no. Here I am joking, but no, they're on mono blue tempo. Or probably more likely mono blue spirits. Yeah, indeed. So they might even have Delver in the deck. Who knows? Depends on if it's spirits or mono blue tempo. Some tempo decks do run Delver. I would say it's much less common, though, obviously. All right, so our current plan, folks, we go Llanowar Elves on 1 and Barkhide Troll on 2 is to see if our opponent has a Spell Pierce, because, you know, Spell Pierce is always going to get us. Yep, gotta put the right number on there. But we don't want them to run away with the game with Curious Obsession. It's a very, very powerful card, right? They could also have a bounce spell here. That would be not great, you know, Fading Hope or something. But they don't run a lot of those things. They might have a Geistlight Snare, but the Geistlight Snare is always going to kind of get us. Yeah, okay, sure enough. And they gotta have it, right, in order for that to pay off in that way. They did. So they always have it, you know, but that's okay. Curious Obsession on the creature. Oh my goodness, another Curious Obsession? Not good news. Our opponent going to be drawing 1,000,000 cards a turn. And in fairness, the race is real now. You know, a 3/3 evasive creature. Very, very powerful, particularly if they have any amount of interaction. Shacklegeist shows up. Okay, so this is interesting, folks. Shacklegeist cannot block creatures unless that creature has flying. High flying, I believe they call it in at WotC. So we just decide, okay, well, if you don't want to be able to block creatures with flying, we're gonna make you, right? We're gonna go ahead and just develop our board. The Werewolf pack leaders also, notably, folks, draw us cards. And if our opponent's going to be drawing a couple of cards a turn, being able to even things up just a little bit with the Werewolf pack leaders, very good indeed. Not being able to give our Barkhide Troll hexproof could open us up to bounce spells or something, but they're more likely to be able to bounce our Werewolf pack leader. It would be my guess. Oh, crud! Supreme Phantom? Supreme Phantom? No! Folks, we were in very good shape. Until our opponent had the two most important cards there, and yeah, we don't have any interaction we can find with this collected company, so we're actually just dead in the air, and we cannot kill them. So GG, opponent, GG, no! Alright, you got us, you got us. Alright, folks, here we are up against Ares Matias. Good luck, Ares Matias. Looking at this hand, and finally we have a collected company, folks. We're a collected company deck, and we just never get to cast the card, you know? That's not the way it works when my opponents have collected company. You know, it feels like they've always got two of them, you know? So, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've got to draw my collected companies better. But we've got one, so darn it, we're keeping this hand, and we're going to try and get there. We start at Kazandu Valley, just to develop our mana enough to get up to collected company, and then go with the Werewolf pack leader on 2. Our opponent goes with Youthful Valkyrie on their turn. Inconvenient. That likely means they are going to be doing angel-y things. So, pre-combat, we're going to go ahead and attack for 3. Play a land, follow it up with an Old Growth Troll, and pass the turn. That does make our Great Henge into a 5 mana cost thing. But no, the stinking opponent has Skyclave Apparition going to eat our Old Growth Troll. Inconvenient. Okay, well, fine. We're going to go ahead and attack with the Werewolf pack leader. Our opponent going to double block here? No, just chump blocks. All right, fair enough. It's tempting to run out the Old Growth Troll just because we know what we're going to get, but darn it, we're going to cast the stinking Collected Company. We're a Collected Company deck. We're going to cast it, okay? Giada Font of Hope going to show up. That is not ideal. But here we go. Well, okay. Could have been worse. Werewolf, Steel Leaf Champion and Llanowar Elves, very good here. The Steel Leaf Champion specifically good because it gets us our Great Henge. Thank heavens. So we're going to go ahead and cast that pre-combat just in case Steel Leaf Champion meets a sticky end somehow, though we wouldn't expect it. But it also gives us the mana to be able to activate our Werewolf pack leader and give trample should we require it, and just trampling in here for a lot of damage. Again, Steel Leaf Champion can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less, so essentially unblockable here. Well, Skyclave Apparition number 2 shows up, does get our Steel Leaf Champion. Not feeling great about that, honestly. No! Resplendent Angel shows up. That is a terrifying, terrifying magic card with a 1/1 counter because of Giada. A lot of options here. So we decide to pay a mana to draw a card for the Llanowar Elves there. We just get a land, so we go with Steel Leaf Champion. Try and decide how to go about this, and briefly debate the Hashep Oasis here, and then decide let's not. Let's go with the Werewolf pack leader. If we play the other stuff, We won't be able to give it trample, you know, so then they could trade with a Resplendent Angel easily. Folks, opponent down to 9. So we just decide, let's go wide, right? Boy, we do that. It's true, folks, we're kind of playing into a board sweeper if our opponent has that, but there aren't too many Angel decks that worry about board sweepers here. Our opponent goes with a Resplendent Angel activation, going to gain 6 life back up to 15, which is kind of tragic. I don't know why they didn't attack with the Giada there, but, you know, whatever. Not going to matter here anyway. Remember, the Steel Leaf Champions, folks, are very, very large indeed. So we're going to go ahead and grow. Doing some math here, thinking about which creature is going to be the best one to grow. So we grow that Llanowar Elves, sacrifice a Hashep Oasis, and then grow another creature here. Again, doing a little debating, and decide to grow that Llanowar Elves just to make sure the damage is unable to be adequately chump blocked. And we go ahead and turn everything sideways. All of the things. And our opponent says, good game. I agree. Math says they cannot survive this attack. So GG, Ares Matias, GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Mango Splash. Good luck, Mango Splash. I think this hand is keepable. We have a Great Henge over here behind my shoulder. We importantly have Llanowar Elves on the play. This is one of the reasons you play this deck, honestly. One of the most powerful turn 1 plays in the entire format is, you know, land, Llanowar, go on the play. You just get so far ahead so quickly, especially if you can follow it up with a 3-drop. Well, folks, we have that. How about 5 evasive power on turn 2? Our opponent has a Steam Vents on the battlefield tapped, and we have a Steel Leaf Champion. I mean, the Llanowar Elves can also attack, for the record. That's a thing that can happen. So essentially, so we have 6 power on board. The worst thing for Mango Splash here is that that isn't what's going to happen. We're not going to attack. We're going to play a land and a Great Henge on turn 3. And then follow it up with a Llanowar Elves, which is going to draw a card. Mango Splash says, there's no way I can ever win. I agree, Mango Splash. It's one of the reasons to play this deck. GG. GG. All right, folks. D still, our next opponent, and we actually have a second copy of Great Henge. You know, one's good enough. They're legendary, right? So you're never thrilled about seeing that second copy in your hand, but darn it, having one of them is very important. So, whatever. You take your lumps when you deck the card. We are going to go ahead and start on a Pelt Collector on the play. Not quite as good as Llanowar Elves on the play for sure, but in fairness, we didn't have a 3-drop to follow it up anyway. So just Werewolf Pack Leader on 2 grows our Pelt Collector, which is a perfectly fine outcome as far as I'm concerned. Going to be able to follow this up with a Forest and see what our opponent has to say. Nothing. So we just, try to drag Werewolf Pack Leader out of our hand. See if our opponent has a counterspell. They in fact do not. Pelt Collector then grows. We attack for 6, which is the magic number for Pack Tactics, which draws us a card. Opponent drops to 12. It's good to be on the play, you know? Shark Typhoon going to get cycled away, draws a card. Our opponent feverishly digging for board sweepers and the like. So we just say, okay. Oh no, darn it! I goofed real bad, folks. We had lethal there. I was thinking that I could activate the Hashep Oasis at instant speed, but you can't. It's only at sorcery. So I'm like, shoot. So then I activate the Werewolf Pack Leader instead. Drop our opponent down to 1. Not thrilled about that, but there also isn't anything our opponent can do about it. So despite my little punt there, D still not going to be able to win the game. So GG, D still, GG. All right, folks, here we are up against Mauda, I guess. I don't know. Don't ask me, folks. I'm just here for the beatdown. That's all. So we're going to start on a turn 1 Pelt Collector. Our opponent goes Jwari Ruins tapped. We're waiting on their turn 2. It's a Hall of the Storm Giants. Our opponent's clearly trying to do something at least a little bit controlling. When you play a, counterspell tapped on turn 1 as your land drop, and then a Hall of Storm Giants on turn 2, you know, it's clear, you know, you're wanting the game to go a little bit later. So they don't have the second Dry Disruption, though. We were really worried we might just run our Werewolf Pack Leader with Dry Disruption, but we don't want to play off curve. We're just going to make them have it. So we get the Werewolf Pack Leader down. Our opponent has Brazen Borrower. They bounce our Werewolf Pack Leader. A little bit odd there, I think. Take 2 for the trouble. And Shock and Breeding Pool to play the Brazen Borrower main phase? What is going on here, folks? I have to assume our opponent's got a plan. I just don't know what it is. Sit here thinking for a minute. And there's a good case you made for just Steel Leaf Champion. Because it just, you know, it absolutely resolves here. We need to play something pre-combat so we can get in a little more effectively. But the Kazandu Mammoth grows the Pelt Collector, and then the Steel Leaf Champion grows the Pelt Collector as well. So it is a good thing to be up to. Now we've got a decision here. Do we play a land and the Great Henge? Kind of worried our opponent's got counter spells, you know? And we don't really want the Great Henge to get countered. So we elect, no, let's go with Steel Leaf Champion. If this resolves, we're perfectly happy, right? We're just worried that it might not. Our opponent does have Rewind. Inconvenient. All right. Well, 3 spells are broken, folks. We decided to go to combat now, though, because that would give them an opportunity to cast the, whatever that, Frilled Mystic, the 3/2. To counter our second spell. Oh boy, and they do. So I'm glad we didn't do that pre-combat. Yep, we did feel like it was necessary to kind of try and get that out of their hand. But remember, folks, our creatures have been getting turned sideways. They're at 5. This is serious business for them. We would like to see a land. We do not. Inconvenient. Werewolf Pack Leader's pre-combat will not grow the Pelt Collector, so we elect to not bother. We just attack for lethal, you know. Opponent has the Frilled Mystic number 2 that they must run out to block, and they're hoping we don't have a bunch more action. I think they know better, unfortunately for them. But rather than, we briefly debated Scavenging Ooze because it's very good to just make sure it resolves. It would grow very quickly, but Werewolf Pack Leaders draws cards, so getting them resolved will aid us in finishing our opponent off if we don't do it this turn, and in fact, we are going to be able to because our opponent scoops it up. So GG. Maudada. GG. Alright, folks, here we are up against Apprentice of Adventure, and yeah, I think this hand is fine. We have a second Steel Leaf Champion hiding out over there, and we have, of course, all the requisite lands to be able to cast all the spells in our hand. Can't ask for more than that, right? Well, I mean, we could be greedy and ask for a 1-drop, but, you know, alas, we took the play. Imagine that. Oh, well. Werewolf Pack Leader. Going to come on down. And Ledger Shredder shows up. Well, okay. That is a good one. So we're going to play a land. Wait till post-combat here. Opponent, unsurprisingly, not willing to chump block with the Werewolf Pack Leader, so we get in a Steel Leaf Champion. The notable thing about Steel Leaf Champion, remember, folks, can't be blocked by creatures 2 or less, so chump blocking Steel Leaf Champion, not likely going to be in the cards. So, all right. Primal Might. Don't mind if I do. So, trying to decide how to go about it, we decide to go with Primal Might. On the Werewolf Pack Leader, because we were kind of hoping they might chump block with the Ledger Shredder. Because the way I'm looking at it is, the best way for us to close out the game is just for our opponent to have nothing on board, right? They're already down to 3 cards in hand, so the Ledger Shredder is going to be clearly the only way they come back into this game. So we were kind of trying to entice them. Yeah, just chump block. Just, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, save some life. Wait it out, right? Or whatever. Because we have a fistful of action. Our opponent clearly does not. Oh boy, Greasefang. Oh, and there is that stupid Sky Sovereign, but it's not enough. Apprentice of Adventure. Scoop him up. GG. GG. Alright, folks, here we are up against Cluck Norris. Good luck, Cluck Norris. And yeah, I think this hand is fine. Of course, again, Werewolf Pack Leader over there to behind my shoulder. we pick up a Primal Might to join it. And we're just going to start on Pelt Collector. Seems like a good place to be. Unfortunately, the place that we are is also against Mono Red. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Not Mono Red. Our opponent has a Llanowar Elves on 2. Much less scary than a Llanowar Elves on 1, but make no mistake, folks, it is still scary for sure. So we're going to grow our Pelt Collector with a Scavenging Ooze and charge in for 2. Cluck Norris, again, with the not just aggression, but a lot of mana to work with as well. Praying no Collected Company. That's the thing we don't want to see. Our opponent jamming Collected Company here would recapture all the momentum that we have on board. Our opponent goes with Pelt Collector of their own and Gruul Spellbreaker. Okay. So they are still able to double spell, which is one of the good things about Collected Company is it essentially is a double spell, right? But, you know, at least they didn't actually collect a company, you know? It took 2 cards out of their hand. So Werewolf Pack Leader shows up, grows our Pelt Collector, and we decide Primal Might on the Pelt Collector because we don't want them to be able to get Trample. And this just kind of helps us in the race, right? We drop them down to 13. If our Gruul opponent is like trying to race, that probably means they have, you know, Embercleaves in our future. So we've got to be cognizant of that. But Embercleave is going to be able to kill us from a pretty high life total through a whole bunch of blocks. So we're going to try and we're going to have to try and avoid that possibility, right? Opponent has Questing Beast. Well, this stinks. So our opponent gets in with a whole bunch of stuff. Sit here debating for a hot minute. Because all of it's inconvenient. We're not pleased about any of this stuff. But we're trying to figure out how this game is going to play out, and we know we're going to have to fight that Questing Beast just to get out of the way. But we also know that we have Collected Companies coming at some point here, right? And that should help a great deal as well. So we decide to very carefully tap so that we don't get messed up by the auto tapper. Of course, we only make it to be a 4/4 because the Death Touch was going to kill it anyway. It doesn't really matter. So Scavenging Ooze is going to get in. We elect not to do the extra point of damage because we wanted to be able to hold up its activation in case our opponent did something from the graveyard or anything like that. Possible, you know, that was a little bit unnecessary. We gave a point of damage for no reason. It does appear as though it was an unnecessary precaution, so... Okay, yes! Land. Happens. We get in for 3. And pass. Our opponent, you know, obviously, they've got to know about the Collected Company. But considering we set it up last turn... hey, here comes an on-crop crasher. Don't mind if I do. Ambushing with Collected Company, I think, is going to be very, very good here. And our opponent, unfortunately, knows they have to play into it. They've got to hope we don't have it. As it happens, we do have it, and we have several 4 toughness creatures that show up and get in the way. Our opponent doesn't even have chump blocking. Llanowar Elves back. Well, they didn't. Now they do, but that's okay. We have a Primal Might ready, willing, and able to take care of the deal. The issue is we don't even need it. Can't block the Steel Leaf Champion anyway, so they block the Scavenging Ooze, and then, of course, the Old Growth Troll and Steel Leaf Champion are good enough for the game. Good game! Cluck Norris. Good game. All right, folks, we are back. And yeah, folks, we had a blast. It was a great time. Really, really enjoyed these games we played. We played a total of 13 matches. Went 10-3 in total. I didn't show you all the matches. I showed you a good many of them. Obviously, you got to see even some of the ones where our opponent kind of maybe didn't play optimally and, some of that stuff. But you got to know. In your average game of Magic, very few people play a perfect game. Very few perfect games have ever been played, right? So you got to know that if you're running a very, very slow game, there's room for a lot of different errors at different times. Whereas if we're attacking very, very quickly and getting the game over, every little error going to matter. And as it happens, some of those errors were kind of egregious from our opponents, but it happens. It absolutely does. That said, like I say, we went 10-3. You didn't get to see a couple of losses. The one we kept 2 mana and just stayed there. Never drew our extra land. Feels a little bad because at 3 mana, I feel like we would have won for a number of different turns there, but honestly, it took forever for our opponent to kill us, and we just sat on 2 lands just staring at our deck. You know, one of those times. Doesn't happen often to this deck. It's pretty, you know, resilient to that sort of thing because we do have the Llanowar Elves as mana sources, the Kazandu Mammoth as mana sources, and 22 lands. So essentially, we do have 24 lands when you count these as lands, and 28 mana sources. You know, almost every other card in our deck is a mana source while still being pretty low to the ground. You know, if you count the Great Henge, which also is a mana source, I mean, literally half of our deck is mana sources. So it should be very, very consistent. But, you know, shuffling is a vicious master, as it happens. We also had a situation where our opponent just had lots and lots of removal, and it won the game, right? So that happens. You got to see the other one. So the mono blue spirits matchup where they just, you know, got evasive in the air and did their job. So big props to them for that. But I do want to stress that I feel like, honestly, given what we saw, we would have won that game if we had just gotten to a 3rd land. So we were very, very close to being 11-2, which is an even better record. Again, I want to stress, I recognize some of these games may not be representative of what you see on the ladder, but when you're playing this deck, you may encounter some amount of that. It does not take much of an error for your opponent to just be out of the game, right? So one of the advantages to playing this deck is it does put your opponent in a seat where they have to be error-free, right? As far as some different choices you could make, the Cemetery Prowler is quite good, and it's in here specifically as a nod to, like, reanimate stuff and Parhelion stuff. Being able to exile both when it enters and attacks, very, very important, so that if we're on the draw against Parhelion, we need to have Scavenging Ooze. And we need them to not have a perfect draw, normally. But at least Cemetery Prowler, if they're just a half a step too slow, then we can exile the important cards in their bin, and then every time it attacks, we can exile more. And of course, the Parhelion deck does have the ability to remove this, which is not ideal. You know, sometimes that Parhelion deck is very resilient, but there's also plenty of times where it's just not that good. So, very good here. But this could be like God Eternal, or I'm sorry, regular Ronas, the 3 mana indestructible Ronas, right? That helps casting the Great Henge as another 5 power 3-drop that we can get with Collect Company. A fine choice to make. Similarly, the Barkhide Troll is just a very solid attacker as a 3/3 that, you know, can gain hexproof. But we don't often have a lot of mana just hanging out, so you're not going to give it hexproof very often. This is almost just a Watch Wolf, just a 2 mana 3/3 sort of thing. So those are kind of flex slots. I've seen people maybe want to pad the land count even more with like Kazandu Mammoth and stuff. It shouldn't be necessary. You know, it does also, you know, having more 3-drops in general does make your Collect Companies better, but it makes your curve worse. So this deck does not have to lean on this card. As you saw in the games we played, we wanted to see Collect Company. We wanted to cast Collect Company. We just almost never got there, largely because the games were decided before Collected Company was even relevant a lot of the time, right? When you can go like Llanowar Elves on 1 into one of our 3-drops, any one of our 3-drops on turn 2, it's really kind of backbreaking in a whole bunch of different situations, whether on the play or on the draw. Particularly on the play, I mean, there aren't too many decks that can stand against that, right? But, so there's also a case to be made, folks, for maybe not worrying so much about this and trying to have a better curve with more 2-drops. That's also possible. So I think the deck is perfectly buildable without Great Henge as well. For the record, you know, so maybe more 2-drops might make the deck more consistent that way, but then we're just kind of a generic aggro deck into generic Collected Company deck, right? And this gives it just a whole new level of power where once this hits the battlefield, unless your opponent bounces it or has a shatter effect, which you don't see too often. It feels like you just can't lose. And it's also good against the mono red decks, things like that, or anything trying to grind out your creatures, where they're trying to use 1-for-1 removal. You'll never beat this card. It's essentially unbeatable at that point. And the life gain is also matters, again, in the mono red matchups. So I chose this build very much on purpose. I wouldn't blame you for maybe tweaking it just a little bit. As far as the rest of it goes, I would not go with more than one Boseiju, because as irregularly as it might be, occasionally it is legendary. And if you end up with like Boseiju Forest as your land drops, that could come back to bite you. And it just doesn't come up often enough that you need to have the artifact enchantment removal to win. As a matter of fact, this is just as often able to be used against their non-basic lands. But again, still a pretty niche case. So I would say don't bother with that. If anything, the card you might want another one of is Hashep Oasis, potentially. Because this can come in really, really handy. Particularly when you're putting it on either a trampler, such as the pack leader or something like that. Or more importantly, the Steel Leaf Champion. That can regularly be like, oof, very powerful indeed. So, all that said, folks, I would invite your own input on the deck down in the comments below. Definitely let us know how you feel about it and the sorts of things you might try and do differently, right? I would invite that a great deal. I hope you folks enjoyed it. Please let me know if you did not, or hopefully, let me know if you did. I would also invite you folks over to my Twitch channel, John Likes Games, over there on Twitch as well. So, come and join us. We stream 5 nights a week. I'd love to have you. Introduce yourself and get to know you. One of the real pleasures of content creation is getting to know the fans. So, really appreciate all you wonderful folks. I will catch you all next time.